getting any of this?
Yeah, Otter's got the meeting notes. I'll ask it for action items in the channel. And Maria already asked for a budget reminder. Smart. Got it, boss.
Otter, you got this. For the most comfortable, luxurious, eco-friendly, and affordable. Handcrafted, American-made mattresses on the market today. Delivered and set up in any room of your house. Saatva, luxury mattresses made affordable.
We're coming together for our yearly service project and running a t-shirt fundraiser through Custom Ink to help the cause. Plus, their design services team helped us get a design we love. Come together for a cause. Get started today at customink.com.
Hi everyone, happy Friday. It's 4 o'clock in the East on a busy and important day of breaking news, including a pair of decisions by the United States Supreme Court, one with massive implications for the very ability of our government to function, the other one throwing a wrench in efforts to hold the January 6th insurrectionists legally accountable. Both of those rulings by the nation's highest court. That court, by the way, also now dominated by a 6-3 right-wing supermajority, as well as a much-anticipated ruling on whether Donald Trump is immune from prosecution and accountability. That's expected on Monday. All of those underscoring the massive and historic and tectonic, unprecedented stakes of the 2024 general election. And that conversation on this day after the first presidential debate of the cycle also making news. Donald Trump went largely unchallenged and unchecked as he blustered and lied for 90 minutes straight. The conversation in many corners of the Democratic coalition is about deep anxiety, bordering on a bit of panic, and lots of questions about what the Biden campaign does to steady all that angst. After an evening in which Trump's torrent of lies last night on virtually every topic raised by the two moderators was largely overshadowed by the performance from President Joe Biden. Earlier today, President Biden, seeming to understand that clearly, in his first extended remarks since the debate, a fired-up, energetic President Joe Biden addressed those concerns in his own party head-on. Watch.
I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth. I know right from wrong. And I know how to do this job. I know how to get things done. And I know, like millions of Americans know, when you get knocked down, you get back up.
President Joe Biden saying, I know how to tell the truth, obviously meant to contrast himself to the ex-president, the ex-president's near nonstop flurry of lies. It took reporter Daniel Dale nearly 3 minutes to fact-check Donald Trump's debate performance last night. Here's just some of that.
What stood out was the staggering number of false claims from former President Trump. On first count, Aaron, I counted at least 30 false claims. He said some Democratic states allow people to execute babies after birth, an egregious lie that is illegal in every state. He said everybody, even Democrats, wanted Roe v. Wade overturned. Roe was supported by 2/3 of Americans, even more Democrats. He said every legal scholar wanted Roe overturned, abortion returned to the states. Legal scholars have told me directly this is not true. He said the U.S. currently has the biggest budget deficit ever. No, that happened under Trump in 2020. He said the U.S. currently has a record trade deficit with China. That also happened under Trump in 2018. He said Biden personally gets a lot of money from China. Zero evidence of this. He said there were no terror attacks during his presidency. In fact, there were multiple attacks. He said Iran didn't fund Hamas, Hezbollah, other terror groups under his presidency. Iran, in fact, did. He said Biden wants to quadruple people's taxes. That is pure fiction. He said the U.S. has provided way more aid to Ukraine than Europe had. It's actually the opposite. He said the U.S. has provided about $200 billion in Ukraine aid. It's closer to $110 billion. He said 18 or 19 million people have crossed the border under Biden. That is millions too high. He said many of these migrants are from prisons or mental institutions. His own campaign cannot corroborate this. He said Biden has only created jobs for illegal immigrants. Total nonsense. He said Nancy Pelosi turned down his offer of 10,000 National Guard troops on January 6th. There's no evidence she even got such an offer. He said Biden made up the idea he called dead service members suckers and losers. No, the Atlantic magazine reported that, and then former Trump Chief of Staff John Kelly corroborated it.
So that portrait of a serial liar, a candidate uniquely unfit for office, was unfortunately and tragically obscured in the moment of last night's debate. It's still unclear what, if anything, changes after last night. One constant remains. The country faces a very stark choice between President Joe Biden and an authoritarian movement led by a candidate whose instincts are fundamentally those of an autocrat. David Frum puts it like this in The Atlantic, quote, "Against the threat of Trump, Americans must save themselves. The job of doing so cannot be delegated to some charismatic savior. And anyway, that charismatic savior has yet to present himself or herself. Television always wants to reduce active human beings to passive viewers. The presidential debate format has especially served this purpose. Do I prefer the candidate in the red tie or the blue one? This most recent debate has taught the danger of spectatorship. The job of saving democracy from Trump will be done not by an old man on a gaudy stage, but by those who care that their democracy be saved. Biden's evident frailties have aggravated that job and made it more difficult, but they have also clarified whose job it is. Not his, yours." That's where we start today with some of our most favorite experts and friends. Former RNC chairman, co-host of MSNBC's The Weekend, Michael Steele is here. Plus, host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, the president of the National Action Network, the Reverend Al Sharpton's here. Also joining us, Democratic strategist, president of Brilliant Corners Research, MSNBC political analyst Cornell Belcher's here, and the executive director of Republican Voters Against Trump, the publisher of The Bulwark, Sarah Longwell's here. Sarah Longwell, you've been in front of the most important pundits and consumers of last night's debates, and that's voters. Tell us what you're hearing from them.
Yeah, so we talked to some of these so-called double haters this morning, and these are actually Trump voters, people who voted for him twice, but after January 6th, were basically out on him, and we're looking for reasons not to vote for him. And look, they used words like embarrassment and train wreck, and everybody thought that the debate was really terrible. But what was interesting to me was it didn't really push anybody back into Trump's column, right? What it did was they all still believe Trump is a liar. They still believe he's a con man. They still believe he's a narcissist. These are all the things. And it was interesting to me, actually, to listen to them, because I think as I watched the debate, I was a little concerned that Trump's demeanor, which is not the same as sort of the big lunatic energy you see from him often, that would sort of lead voters to maybe say, like, oh, Trump seems more reasonable. But these voters, they were clocking all the lies. They understood that Donald Trump was not telling the truth, and that much of the substance of his comments was crazy. But look, Biden's performance, they were also just really thought was terrible. They were concerned about his cognitive abilities. And for the couple of voters in the group who had really been sort of leaning towards Biden because they were so repulsed by Trump, they were kind of back on the fence. And I actually, what you heard from a lot of them that I think is, I don't know, maybe the most depressing is how many of them were thinking just about sitting it out or writing somebody in. They were much more third-party curious in this moment. I don't know that this moment lasts forever, but in this moment, they were back to like thinking about RFK. And so, yeah, I think for people who maybe didn't have high expectations of Joe Biden to begin with, which I think when you talk to the double haters, they are already concerned about Joe Biden's mental acuity. And so last night didn't necessarily shock them, but it didn't do anything to bring them into Biden's column, which is what he needed to do last night, right? He had to help these double haters for whom their hatred is really for Donald Trump, but they think Joe Biden's too old. He was needed to convince them that, in fact, he was up for the job. And I just don't think that's what got done last night.
You know, Michael Steele, I love what Joe Biden said today. I mean, he's speaking directly to what Sarah's sort of studied, data-driven analysis said he needed to do. He said, I may not walk as well as I used to. I may not debate as well as I used to, but I'll always tell you the truth. And he could go on and on in that construction. I'll never steal classified documents. I won't, in a deposition, you know, in the year 2024, say that you can still grab women between the legs, because that's what famous people have done for a million years. I mean, there may have just been too much, right? Sometimes there's such a volume of atrocities in terms of what Trump has said and done that it's hard for anyone that's ever gone up against him in the Republican primary going back to 2015 to focus. But I wonder what you make of where voters seem to be processing last night's debate.
Well, I think they're kind of like, I don't know. And I think Sarah's focus groups and her analysis of this is really put her fingers on that piece of it. But that piece is not necessarily bad for Joe Biden in terms of, and it's really important to understand what Sarah said. Those voters did not move back to Trump.
Right.
So those voters are still gettable. Those voters are still persuadable. Those voters, quite honestly, are still looking for something to affirm the decision to talk, to move, and to act in a way that says, yeah, I'll go with Joe Biden. And last night, everybody in this moment knows was a cluster. It did not help. It screwed all kinds of stuff up. But that's okay. That's okay. You know why it's okay? Because y'all knew the man was 81 years old. You knew that. How do you know that? Because you renominated him. And you renominated a 78-year-old. So this is where we are. So let's take that crap off this table. Now the Democrats need to figure out, okay, what did we do last night? And you put your finger last night on Nicolle on something that's very important here. Own this thing. Don't run away from it. And it was very refreshing to see Joe Biden today come out and own it. I'm 81. I don't walk as well as I used to. I have a stutter and I mess up sentences. But I'm not that guy, right? As an 81-year-old, I don't want to be a dictator. As an 81-year-old, I don't want to take the federal government and deconstruct it so that the things that you rely on and need are no longer done. And I think the more they begin to reframe this conversation, taking into account the thing that they've been running away from, that is his age, and own that, the more you expose Donald Trump for the charlatan, the liar, the putrid piece of humanity that he is. And that's what they need to do for the rest of this campaign. And stop worrying and nervous Nellying this conversation. Democrats right now are their own worst enemy. Republicans are just sitting back going, okay, we don't say anything about the debate. Let them do the talking, right? And they're talking their guy out of the race. As Joe Biden said, I'm picking myself up and I'm back in this thing. Last night was not good. And y'all saw it, I saw it. But here's what I want to do now. Let's stay in this fight for you. And I think that narrative can be important if they